And so in the 9th and 10th verses, Isaiah talks about the response of people of his day, and it continues today when people respond to this revelation of God's righteousness from above by grumbling and complaining about God's ways. Why does God act in this way towards His children? Why does God sovereignly bring His children to birth into this world and not recognize us for all that we do and all that we have achieved? In many ways, what Isaiah is talking about is that old spirit of Cain long ago, who along with his brother Abel came before the Lord and brought his sacrifice to God. But his sacrifice was from the fruit of the ground. It was grains, it was fruit, and that sort of thing. It was not a blood sacrifice. And so with that, Cain was saying basically, I don't need my sins atoned for. I don't need a substitute for my sin. I just need to show my love for God. Give a kind of offering to Him in a non-bloody fashion. I'm okay, basically. I don't need an atonement for my sin. Abel saw it differently, and he brought one of the lambs from his flock and offered that before the Lord because he saw that as a sinner he needed a substitute. He needed God's provision for him. And he waited in faith for what God would do for him. The spirit of Cain continues in the world today. A spirit which relies upon one's own personal righteousness and does not look in faith to what God would provide from above. There's a continuing effort to cling to oneself and what I can do and achieve. Whether it be through the works religions that you find in the world today, whether it be Buddhism, getting your right karma, Hinduism, or the Islamic faith, where you'll be judged by your good works, particularly if you sacrifice yourself for the cause. Good works are what people look for. It gives them some sense of self-esteem, some sense of pride. You can find it in many Christian religions as well, where people do not really satisfy themselves with God's provision of righteousness in all of its fullness, but seek to add to it in certain ways, whether it's through the acts and activities of others on their behalf, the saints, whether it's through their own acts, or whether we reduce the law of God to a simple choice that I make neutrally. God sees that I can't observe the law perfectly, so He makes another way. You just believe, and He leaves it up to you to make that choice. And so you take that choice on your own, without any help and assistance from God. That is a good work on your part. God saves us by the imputation of His righteousness through faith, but that faith itself is that which He gives us. Which is contrary to the Arminian evangelical who says that God sits back and waits for you to respond on your own, so that you have a heart that can decide for itself in its own strength to believe or not to believe. It's works righteousness, what I do. Isaiah challenges the people of his day with righteousness from above. He talks about the response that people have who quarrel with their Maker. And Isaiah likens them to the potsherd, perhaps a broken piece of pottery out in the field. And is grumbling and complaining about the way God does what He does. Why does God form and fashion certain people the way He does? Why does God allow other things to occur the way they occur? We're not happy with God's works, His works of providence, or the way that He provides salvation. And so they quarrel with their Maker. They question His right to bring children into the world in the way that He does. Will He do it through a sovereign act, through His own purpose and grace. What is it that He is doing? Remember, Jesus says you must be born again and born from above, from heaven, by the Spirit of God coming into you and giving you new life. But the modern man quarrels with that and rejects that. We don't need the Spirit of God from above coming in and producing a new birth, making us new and different. We just need to mature. We just need to improve. We need a little guidance, a little enlightenment. So the modern man rejects this idea of a supernatural intervention where God sovereignly comes and gives His Spirit and causes us to be born again so that we might be enabled to see the kingdom of God. The natural man rejects God's way of salvation and quarrels with his Maker. It's like trying to box with God. You might have quite a nice stance in the way that you try to fight with God, but swing as hard as you might, you're not going to reach Him. You can't quarrel with God. He is the Creator, the one who made the heavens and the earth. And so Isaiah begins to respond to the quarrels of these creatures by saying, who is it that you are fighting with? Why do you try to fight with God and His ways? He is above you. He is the Creator. Notice what Isaiah is doing. He's answering their objections, first of all, by reasserting God's sovereignty, His right to do what He wills with His own. God is the Maker. If you were an artist and you made a pot for yourself, you have the right to use that pot as you will. Either to put a plant in it, or to put a meal in it, or to use it to carry out some trash or what have you. You can use it whatever way you want because you are the Maker. Isaiah points the people of this day to God and says, He is our Creator. He has the right to do what He wants with His own. So the natural man cannot quarrel with God. But when Isaiah says that, it does not mean to suggest that although God has the right, He can do evil things and treat people wrongly. Rather, by pointing to God as the Creator, He reminds us that God is above us. His ways are not our ways. He is righteous in all that He does. He is wise and He knows what He's doing. If He created the heavens and the earth and knows all of their mysteries and all that is formed, then surely He knows, or He has a good reason for why He made the world the way it is. And for us to rise up and to question God is the height of arrogance. It's trying to take a swing at God, who's far above us. And so Isaiah lifts our minds up to the transcendent God, the Creator of the heavens and the earth, who knows all things and has a reason and a purpose for why He made things the way they are, and who acts according to His purposes. And what is more, He's the God who acts freely to save His people. He is the sovereign God who enters into this world and He rescues His people according to His own will. By His own good pleasure, He is pleased to set a people aside for Himself and to deliver them.